Hi everyone, you're listening to Heard It on a Playground, a podcast that brings important information about designing and building fun, safe and exciting playgrounds. This podcast is brought to you by the play experts at Parkworks and RecTek Industries, where we share a combination of 60 plus years of experience. I'm David Wilson, I'll be your host for the podcast. Our aim is to bring in a number of guests in the fields of parks and playgrounds, and just as the title says, Heard It on the Playground, we aim to share that expertise and to help our listeners get tips on the best practices in the world of play. All podcasts will be recorded, and should you want to listen again, you can get a recorded version off our website. In today's podcast, we're discussing the importance of shade and seating in playgrounds and recreation spaces. Sun exposure in playgrounds and other outdoor recreational settings may result in sunburn and increased skin cancer risk if sun protection is not used. A 2007 report from the Canadian Journal of Public Health indicated that shade is a key factor in influencing a parent's choice of which park or playground they visit. Given these factors, should we be building playgrounds without shade? We brought in Danielle and Kathleen from RecTek Industries to discuss the importance of shade and seating for keeping kids not only safe, but in the playground longer. Danielle and Kathleen are both play experts from RecTek Industries, as well as both are busy mums who have spent a significant amount of time in the playground. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, David. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you, David.
no worries. How's the weather in sunny Vancouver? I assume it's sunny.
Not so much today.
Okay.
It was yesterday.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, anyway, I'd like to start with Danielle, if that's okay. There's been a lot of research into providing shade as a health intervention for recreation spaces. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure thing, David. You kind of alluded a little bit to it in your introduction there, but when we're talking about health issues outdoors, we're talking about anything from dehydration all the way up to an increase in the risk for skin cancer. And shade is a simple solution for that health risk. So there has been research recently out of New Zealand and the UK as well that showed that shade was a key aspect in people choosing where they were going to spend their time in urban open spaces, which makes complete sense. I mean, if you have two parks fairly close to you and one is shaded and one is not, which one are you going to be more comfortable at? Which one are you going to go to more frequently? So it's important to consider as the years wear on and we get hotter and hotter summers.
So I'd like to pose a question actually to Kathleen. What would you say are the solutions when it comes to sun exposure and thermal comfort?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that you need to consider. And the first thing is, do you have the opportunity for placement of shade covers over the playground? So is that feasible within the space? And if it is, then you have to look at whether you are looking at a natural shade solution or if it's going to be something that is man-made. And there's a lot of things to consider, especially when looking at a natural solution. The first thing is looking at the types of trees that you may have the opportunity to plant if it is a new area, new playground space. And ensuring that placement is key not only for the summer to give shade, but also in the colder winter months that does allow the sun to hopefully peek its way through into that area. And then there's a couple of other key things with natural shade solutions as well, is that you want to ensure that although you want the trees to provide that shade, you don't want them too close to the playground, because you could have root issues where roots are coming up into the playground space, or even longer limbs overhanging into that play space. And then I would say finally the last thing that you really need to consider, and I think probably one of the key things of looking at a natural solution, is if you are planting new trees, how long are those trees going to take to actually provide that shade solution? They don't grow overnight. Typically you're probably looking at 15 to 20 years, I would say, until they are able to provide you with shade. So in the meantime, you may want to consider a man-made solution.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Forget about that. There's that normal growing time for trees. And are there organizations or companies out there that have trees that are 15 years old, for instance? Can you actually get those locally?
That is a very good question because I have never bought one and I am not sure.
Yeah, no, I know in other parts of the country that there are sort of nurseries set up with trees like that. You can just buy off the shelf, but they're pretty expensive. Danielle, what's your thoughts? I mean, we've talked about natural shade. What about kind of man-made shelters and things like that? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, same thing with natural shade. There's a lot of options and aspects to consider with man-made shade. Firstly, you see it in a lot of city parks. It could be something like a structural shelter that goes over a picnic table. That's a really popular option. It not only provides the shade, but also in, our more milder climates, protection from rain. If you're, you want to get out there, but it's a little bit spitting, that's a great option. Shade sails are excellent. We can see it on the picture here that you've got up. They've got a lot of pluses. Firstly, that Kathleen was talking about planning for multiple seasons. It's providing that shade in the summer for you, but you can remove the shade sails in winter and allow that great vitamin D and any sort of warmth that the sun might provide in winter. And it also makes your shade sails last longer because you're not having them up year round. You can use them just seasonally. And lastly, I would say, there is an option if you're going to have a structure, a play equipment structure. You can get variations with roofs on them. They might not always provide a ton of shade on the structure itself because with CSA guidelines, the roof has to be so high so that you can't climb on it. But it does provide some shade for the playground space itself. And perhaps choose a structure that is going to have some play activities underneath the platforms or decks. Kids love hammocks and play panels and desks, and that will draw them to that space where they can take a break from the hot sun.
Interesting. I'm just looking at our picture that we've got up. Do the structures have to be as big as that? I mean, do they come in different forms with cell type structures like that? Can you do different types of configurations?
The great thing about shade sails is that they're so customizable. Anything from a high pod with a singular post in the middle and sort of flaring outward from that to these sorts of, larger structures with bigger footings. And it also makes it available that if you have the right selection of equipment and the play space, you might actually be able to put a shade sail directly over the playground equipment, which is a really great option if you're in a hot climate during the summer.
Oh, absolutely. So I just wanted to move on to the kind of CSA guidelines. And Danielle, I'll stay with you actually, if that's okay. Can you tell me what the CSA guidelines as they relate to thermal comfort in play environments?
Yeah, thermal comfort is sort of a new buzzword with the CSA this year. They've updated their guidelines as of 2020, and they've got a new Annex K, that is dedicated to thermal comfort. And so they're talking about 4 different aspects. Sun exposure, which is the most easily resolvable with shade. But they also talk about air movement, humidity, and temperature. And all of these combine to make the sort of term of thermal comfort. Mm-hmm. And some of them are a little bit more difficult to address than others, but shade does play a role in each of them. And they're highlighting that this is a great way to address those health concerns we were talking about earlier. Not only that, but also practical solutions like having slides that get too hot. When you're a kid and you're in your little summer shorts and you're going down the steel slide and it's just too hot, that's a really great solution, just to have some shade over it. As well as things like adding water fountains or choosing, if you're going with a rubber surface, choosing a lighter color. So you're not getting that black hot surface that's going to make it uncomfortable. So their main focus is allowing the children to play longer, making it more comfortable for them to play as long as they want when they are comfortable in the space.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to the thermal comfort. I know when I was a kid, you'd often burn yourself on a stainless steel slide, which, you just went home with a burn and that was it. Mum dealt with it, But I'm glad to see they're tackling that at the moment. Actually, I just wanted to change the tack now to kind of more towards the sort of seating side of things. Kathleen, what role does seating play in all of this?
Well, an extremely important role, and Danielle mentioned, just a few moments ago regarding making kids more comfortable by providing shade, but we want to ensure that the caregiver, the person bringing the children to the park, that they are comfortable. And what we find is if we are able to give them a comfortable seating solution with shade, they are likely to stay at the park longer, and therefore children are there longer and being more active. So as important as it is for children to be comfortable, just, if not more important, I would argue as a parent that the caregiver is very comfortable.
Oh, yeah. Does the type of seating matter for any space or for the particular space you're looking at? Have you got to be particular, one with a back, one with a bench, that type of thing? What's your perspective on that? How do you approach it like that?
So I think you have to look at what type of playground or public space you're looking at. Who is likely, what is that space being used for? A destination park that, there could be birthday parties celebrated at, or family gatherings and that. So you want to ensure that you have the appropriate type of seating. Where at a neighborhood park, you may be looking at bit more informal seating and really a place for a caregiver just to sit and rest while they watch the children play. But beyond that, there's also, of course, different types of seating for different users of the park. And more elderly caregiver, it's probably important to take a look at benches with arms so that it's easier for them to get, up from the seated position.
Interestingly, and it's a complete out of left sort of field question, are we bringing more technology into, the furniture that we're introducing into playgrounds? Danielle, would you know anything about that?
Yeah, actually, there is some new aspects to that as well. We've even seen it in things like bus shelters. You can get site furnishings that have USB chargers and things like that. So it is a really great option. And when we're talking about having caregivers stay at the park longer, your job as a caregiver in the playground is to watch your kid. But, if your kids are a little bit older, why can't you be on your phone every once in a while? And that's something that you can consider for sure, is adding something like that. And, not every style has it, but what you could do is look at sort of family styles of benches. So if Kathleen was talking about different users, you can still get a cohesive look, but make sure that you have different benches or different styles for different people. You could get a picnic table that looks the same style as your bench, and it just all looks really cohesive and really good, but offer something different to each user.
And I also heard that I think some of the kind of more interesting mates from Europe offer Wi-Fi as well, like Wi-Fi hubs, which is phenomenal. So final thoughts, I suppose, from both of you. What would your final thoughts be on shade or bringing in, furniture into the playground?
Actually, one thing I did want to mention quickly, just about seating, if I could, is that we're talking about benches and picnic tables and that, but you can also look at natural seating options, and that could be, stumps or logs, rocks, and especially for the younger child, a bit more of an informal seating area, where there's almost could be a bit of a play element, but yet still that spot for them to sit and take a break and a rest. So, you have your manufactured seating and that as well, but you could also look at bringing in more of a natural seating option.
Actually, that's a good point. And also, don't forget, you've got the grass as well. Bring a nice rug and a picnic, and you're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I was just going to ask, any final thoughts from either of you at all on either the topic of sort of shade or seating?
I think one thing that both Kathleen and I are on board with, being, moms that have taken our kids to the playground, is, we're talking about two separate topics here, shade and seating, but you really need to think of them in combination. Shade is going to make the kids play longer, and seating is going to make the caregivers allow them to stay longer. But if you don't have seating in the shade too, the caregivers still aren't going to stay. We have a fantastic playground across the street from my house, and all of the seating is in the sun side of the playground. And if it's a really hot day, I'm either standing over in the shade or melting in the hot sun. So it's important to consider that these really work in combination together.
Absolutely. And I think as well, the key takeaway is why we look at this and providing shade and seating is we want our children to be more active. And by providing these opportunities, we ensure, moving forward, we have healthier, more active children in our communities.
Couldn't say better than that. Actually, thank you both so much. It's been phenomenal speaking to you, and thanks for your bringing your knowledge to the table here. Actually, I've got a quick question. I'm just going to throw it open to our guests, and I've actually got a question from Justin. He's in Alberta. He was saying that, do you have any idea of kind of the range of cost for shades within a playground? I know that's a very difficult question to be pinpoint accurate on it, but what sort of range are you looking at? What sort of budget should you have?
So I think it really does depend, obviously, on the space that you're looking to shade, yeah. And as well, what type of structure you're looking at. The one that is shown on the screen here, you can see has some fairly heavy-duty posts. So you have large footings, and that a lot of your cost is going into there. But there are solutions that offer, don't use as large of posts and that, so are much more economical. Yeah. And you likely can start, on a very small scale at a few $1,000s, and, going up to shading your whole area. You could get up to as high as you want to, essentially. But
the sky's the limit, so to speak.
Sky's the limit, yeah. But I think that there are opportunities at a fairly, budget-friendly options, and even you could also look at adding some over time. So you may not have the budget to do the whole space or everything that you want to do at the beginning, but you can add to that as well over time.
Got you. Okay. I've just got another question now. Sue in Saskatoon, do the cells last through the winter?
Yes, they are built for that purpose. You're going to need to work with whatever company you're dealing with, whatever manufacturer, to make sure that it's engineered for your snow loads and that sort of thing. But they are flexible to handle that snow load and last through the winter without removing them. But Kathleen is actually very expert on this. Do you have anything to add, Kathleen? So
yeah, there are a few different types of fabrics available, and you want to ensure that you are using the fabric which doesn't have any fillers, that really keeps its shape. So even if you do have a great snowfall, once it's cleared, it is retaining its shape and bouncing back up. Now, that being said, that is from British Columbia and the Vancouver area where I am from, with snow loads in Alberta and Manitoba, and that you would have to really look and see if that is possible, dependent on the snow loads. I never want to say nothing is not possible, but it may be advantageous to take them down in some climates during the winter months.
And that makes sense, actually. And actually, just one quick addendum to that question. What kind of maintenance do they require, and how long do they typically last from your experience?
So the shade cells of the company that we have worked with, they have two different shade fabrics that they use. One comes with a 10-year UV warranty and the other with a 15 UV warranty. So They definitely stand up against time. In regards to maintenance, fairly easy. You want to ensure that you're getting debris and that off of them. They are fairly easy to take down and store in the winter if you want to do that, but extremely great quality. And they are built to withstand, windstorms and rain. And it's a commercial grade quality product that is meant to be outdoors.
Got you. Okay. Well, I think that's all our questions that have been asked. And I just really want to thank you both for coming on today. It's been phenomenal. And I love the knowledge that you have about this as well. And I'm sure we're going to have some questions after the podcast. So thanks again. I want to thank Danielle and Kathleen for sharing the knowledge and expertise. And I want to thank all of our listeners for taking time out of their day to join us.